Hey guys, Aaron Shover from Sword Carolina. I want to do a video on the 4 guards as they are seen in the Codex Döbringer. Now, Liechtenauer says that there's only 4 guards that are useful in fencing. There's Ox, Flug, Alber, and vom Tag. But then in other manuscripts, and even in the Codex Döbringer, you see other guards mentioned. You know, Schrankhoot, Nebenhoot, Long Point, Long Art. So when we see the 4 guards, there's only 4 guards, I see these as categories. Much of this art is given to us in a very simplified form to make it easy to remember and easy to understand. And so if we're looking at the sword on the ground, no matter which way my sword is pointing, if the point's on the ground, I think that that's going to be listed under one heading, Alber normally. Likewise, if I have my sword up on the shoulder or up high or over or here, this is all going to be vom Tag. Now later on you may come up with different names for each individual position, but when you're dealing with Liechtenauer's verse, that's all going to be under the same heading. And even, in fact, it even puts Long Point under the same heading as vom Tag. The first interesting thing we note from the Codex Döbringer is the author is quoting Liechtenauer as saying that he doesn't want you to sit and wait in the guards. So these are not static positions. These are not a position where I would get into my guard and I would just stand there and wait for you to come at me. Or I'm just going to stand here and wait. All of the guards can be broken by a strong or resolute attack. And so they are not positions where we can just statically wait for our adversary. Liechtenauer would much rather you actually come in with attacks and seize control of the fight. Because if someone is in a strong guard and I attack them somewhere else, they're going to have to move anyway. So see the guards as being very useful positions, but positions that you're getting into in your attacks and your defenses, not positions that you're hanging out and waiting in and camping in. Right? Because Liechtenauer has the proverb that he who lays still is dead and he who moves lives. And they directly relate it to the guards. You'd rather you be in motion, you can get into the positions of the guards while you're fighting, but not sit there and wait in them. The Codex Döbringer labels their guards a bit differently. It takes any guard with the point on the ground, it actually calls the plow, or the Flug, instead of Alber, which is what you normally see in the other manuscripts. Now, our study right now is focused on Döbringer, but in our general parlance, we stick with Alber because that's the more common usage of this guard. But I would say that this actually, to me, looks more like a plow when you're plowing the ground with the point of your plow in the ground. So this actually looks more like a plow. It could be that this was the original title and the title shifted. It could just be that the masters didn't agree on everything, which common sense would dictate that they would disagree on things from time to time. But in any case, we have the guard here, which he calls plow, which other people call Alber. And then he also labels the Schrankhoot as being the same guard. The second guard is Ox, or the upper hanging from the shoulder. So for this one, we do want to have the sword pointed at the other person. That's one key of the hanging, is that you want the sword pointed at your opponent. I don't want to point out to the side or up in the air because it's removing that threat. So I want to have my sword pointed right at my opponent from the right side or from the left side. I like to have my cross guard horizontal here for a couple different reasons, but mostly it puts my cross guard in a good position to defend my hands against, like, the most common attack from here would be an Oberhau, let's say. And then it also sets me up really well for Zwerchau if I'm already in that horizontal position here. The third guard that Döbringer mentions is what he calls Alber, or Fool, and what pretty much everyone else calls the plow. This is held low. This is the lower hanging. The upper hanging was done from the shoulder. This one's done more from the hip. Still have the point pointed forward in front of me. In this case, my personal preference, I like to have my cross guard vertical here because that's going to defend a little better against an Unterhau. And if I'm on my right side, I have my short edge pointed up, my long edge pointed down, and my thumb on the inside. When I move to the other side, I'm actually going to rotate my sword so that my long edge is pointed up and my short edge is pointed down. But in both cases, I want to keep that point in front of me. So this would be Alber, if you're looking at Döbringer, but then plow in the other manuscripts. And then the fourth and last guard is vom Tag. We like to do this from the shoulder. You do see also above the head, above the shoulder, behind the neck. We like to do it just with the sword pointed roughly straight up, held at the shoulder. And this is going to lead into very powerful cuts from above. It's probably the most classic version from this. And from this, you can cut long into long point. And once again, Döbringer classifies long point as a version of the vom Tag category. And then the manuscript reiterates the fact that they don't want you to see the guards as places where you stay and were places where you would be safe. He would much rather, Liechtenauer would much rather you try to seize control of the fight with a good Vorschlag and stay in motion than he would be for you to sit and wait for your opponent to do something. Once again, he who moves lives and he who is still is dead. So thank you very much. As always, these are our interpretations of it. This one's really interesting though, because you do see some direct differences between the Döbringer manuscript and some of the other manuscripts like Ringek and von Danzig in the labeling of the guards. And so this is something to keep in mind. It's not necessarily that one is right and the other one must be wrong. There are differences of opinions today, in case you guys don't know. And we can only assume that there are differences of opinions hundreds of years ago as well. So let's not think of it as right or wrong. Let's study a variety of sources and try to get a good cohesive view of Liechtenauer's art. So thanks a lot, guys.